podcast where we put you on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in the Mappable USA studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, today we got a podcast for all you Opportunity Zones people. A lot of questions coming up towards the end of the year. We're going to get to all that. And before we do, let's bring on Vicki Hutchmala from the QOZ Marketplace and the Opportunity Zones Authority. Vicki, how's it going over there today?
You know what, Ron, I'm always so happy living in Vegas. It's such a wonderful place. And today, you know, we're experiencing something that we don't usually do, and it's called possibility of rain. So it's kind of exciting today, but not as exciting as our guest. We're going to talk about opportunity zones, the deadlines of December 31st, and opportunity zone businesses and how that works as far as the deadline for December 31st. Let's get started.
Wow, that was a mouthful for sure. Let's start the show. Folks, let's bring on Blake Christain. Blake is the partner over at HCVT and a frequent Mappable guest star here. So, Blake, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Great to be on with you and Vicki. I always appreciate the opportunity.
You know, Blake, whenever I search for Opportunity Zone experts, doesn't matter where I go, your name keeps popping up on Google and every place else. So you've made a great name for yourself. But you know what? I would imagine there might be some people here who've never heard our show before and maybe not know who you are. So before we get started, can you kind of give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. I've been a tax CPA for 41 years, started my career at KPMG in Los Angeles, and then about 27 years ago, joined up with some of my former coworkers from KPMG, and now I'm a partner with Holthouse, Carlin & Van Trite. We're a West LA-based firm with 13 offices and approximately 700 total head count in the firm. I now work primarily in Park City, Utah, also spend some time in Long Beach, California office, and we have a crew of about 7 people that work primarily on Oz projects. We've formed over 125 Opportunity Zone funds. Probably about 30% of those are operating businesses rather than real estate projects, which is the kind of the more normal project that you would have in an Opportunity Zone fund. So it's quite interesting to work on both the real estate as well as the operating businesses, which range from, biotech to tech to, financial companies. And I also have my own Opportunity Zone fund, MIT Modular, which converts shipping containers into housing. And we're also working on interesting things in Las Vegas with you and your associates there. So it's a fun time.
It is definitely a fun time. So
you just said something kind of interesting to start the show, Blake. You'd mentioned how most Opportunity Zone funds talk about real estate, and I think that was the case a while back. But the ones that I'm seeing, all the excitement is going towards these businesses now, and I'm looking at what's going on here. It's really tremendous, and you pretty much led the coalition on all this because you were doing the businesses before everybody else was, it seems. So you hooked up on a nice thing, and I'm seeing all the new stuff is all on businesses right now. So are you seeing that too?
Yeah, the proportion of new projects there, and I probably just because of my experience with the operating businesses, I attract more of that. But I would say, it might be as much as 50-50 operating businesses in real estate, whereas in the beginning it was 90-10. And the operating businesses, just bring in, different dimensions and what we've done, and I was one of the early ones to structure them this way, but you can, it's called twinning, and you basically can combine tax code sections. There's no limitation on that. And so you can have an operating business And if it meets certain criteria, service businesses, it doesn't work so well, but if you're manufacturing or a tech businesses often work, there's code section 1202 in the Internal Revenue Code, which allows you to, if you're operating as a C Corp and your valuation is under $50 million when you issue the stock, there's some other hurdles, but you can build up that business and actually exit it in 5 years and get up to a $10 million exclusion per investor, or the greater of $10 million or 10 times your equity investment. So if you put $2 million in, you get a $20 million exclusion. Now that's,
wow.
In the crosshairs in the Biden tax bill, where they're going to go back to only a 50% exclusion rather than the 100%. But it's very valuable, and it's a really nice structuring mechanism because a lot of private equity and venture capital investors, don't want to wait the full 10 years. So this way they could pull out some of their equity at the 5-year mark and then ride the rest of it to the 10-year mark and get unlimited exclusion. So it's really there's some really fun structuring things that we've been doing from the start.
Well, and the businesses in opportunity zones, I personally believe that was kind of the crux of the program, because the businesses are what elevate the residents that are living in that opportunity zone fund, provide them with jobs and income, and kind of realize the value of opportunity zones is more in the business than a real estate project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think the sustainable impact is much greater when you have an operating business. Granted, if you build a hotel in one of these Oz census tracts, that's going to create oftentimes 100 plus jobs, but they're often the lower paying hospitality type jobs. Whereas if you have a manufacturing operation, which is our business, we're going to have 30 minimum full-time jobs, in the first few months, and a payroll of over $1.5 million, and we're going to be doing a lot of training, trades, and we're also focused on hiring veterans. We're also hiring people that may have been incarcerated, and so we're it's very much a kind of a social impact type of investment opportunity also. So we're enjoying that part of it.
And it's really important to, if you're going to invest in an opportunity zone, regardless of where it is, and since they're all kind of competing with each other, it's important to pick an appropriate project that's actually going to work and be successful in that opportunity zone, not just in the next 6 months after the real estate project is completed, but it's still successful 6 or 10 years down the road as well. So, just because you think it's a great idea to open up a hotel, if the community isn't going to support it and people aren't going to come to the area to rent one of your hotel rooms, you kind of wasted your investment.
Absolutely. It's got to, it's, as they say, an Oz fund is going to make a good investment better, but it's not going to turn a bad investment into a good investment. So you have to have a sound business strategy, right place, right time, with the right idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Blake, we're already into November here. We're coming up on December. There's deadlines coming up, and there's all kinds of things that opportunity zones investors have to be aware of. Can we maybe go over some of those things that these guys are completely clueless when it comes to what they need to do and the time frame involved in it,
Right, yeah. So this is a great public service program you have today. You don't want to get to December 31st and be panicking. So let's just go over some of the key deadlines. Number one, from the investor side, if you have capital gains in 2021 that have occurred in the last 180 days, and it's longer if you have a capital gain flowing in from a K-1. But assuming you have a capital gain, it can be short-term, long-term. It can be basically from anything, cryptocurrency, you sold a piece of real estate, you sold your home, and you had more than a $500,000 exclusion if you were, married couple. You sold a family business. It's pretty unlimited. The only thing that doesn't qualify is a gain from the sale to a related party. So if you are exiting a partnership and somebody buys 20% of your 50% interest in that partnership and you retain 30%, that's a bad gain. You can't roll that into an opportunity zone fund. But other than that, any of these gains can be rolled into an opportunity zone fund, and you can set up your own opportunity zone fund, which is referred to as technically it's a qualified opportunity fund under the Internal Revenue Code, or you can invest in a third-party opportunity zone fund. And most of what we do is for people that have large exits is we set up what we call a captive opportunity zone fund. They put their money in there, and once that money's in there, they have about 36 months to figure out exactly how they're going to deploy that money into either a real estate project, operating business, etc. And so that's the biggest deadline is get that money into an opportunity zone fund by year end. The benefit of doing that is, as the tax law stands right now, you'll get a 10% reduction in the gain that you report when that deferral ends at the end of 2026. So if I take $1 million, put it into an opportunity zone fund by year end, when the clock ticks on December 31st, 2026, my gain is realized, but I only have to report $900,000, a 10% reduction, because I get a basis bump because I've held that investment for 5 years. If you invested that same $1 million on January 1st, you can't hold it for the full 5 years because December 31st, 2026 will toll, right, and you won't meet the 5-year deadline. So that's the big deadline that everybody is kind of focused on. Now, just to put people at ease, and I do encourage people to take advantage. It's a free, 10% reduction in your gain. But if you miss it, it really, depending on your state, but on the average taxpayer is only going to have a 3% increase in their tax liability in 2027 when they pay it, because the math is, that 10% basis bump that you didn't get times a combined federal and state capital gain rate of about 30%, it's 3%. So it's not the end of the world. We're not going to find that all of a sudden the Oz investments are going to dry up in 2022, but it's kind of that's the first big deadline. Ron, were you going to ask a question? Sorry.
Well, actually, this rollover into the opportunity zone, you're talking about any kind of capital gains, right? It's not like just real estate in terms of the 1031. We're talking about any capital gains you have, right?
Yeah, and keep in mind, it's not just long-term. A lot of people think it's only long-term gains. Short-term gains work also. And actually, short-term gains, because those are taxed at ordinary tax rates, and you're, often paying federal and state 45% plus, those are going to be more valuable to roll into an opportunity zone fund because you're you're going to keep 45% more to invest into a project and defer that tax for 6 years.
Right.
So,
and you also mentioned cryptocurrency too. Is there anyone over 40 years old that's taking advantage of crypto? Because it seems to me they're all in their 20s and 30s, and they're all making all this money. It's like, geez.
Hey, I was on the phone this morning with somebody in New York that was in his 70s, and he's been a crypto investor for 10 years and making a lot of money.
Oh my God!
So there's
a Renaissance guy.
It is a young person's game on crypto, but and some of the older people got in a little bit later. But there's a lot of people making a lot of money, and we're setting up a lot of crypto Oz funds or money. We're setting up Oz funds that have their gain source in crypto, and most of those, because they're very active traders, are short-term gains. And so again, as I just mentioned, there's more tax savings on those short-term gains, and those are the first ones you want to roll into Oz funds.
Yeah.
So moving along, the other deadlines is a lot of the QOF level testing. So once you set up an Oz fund, every 6 months you have to measure and make sure that 90% of your assets are invested in qualified opportunity fund assets, and either land, building, or a subsidiary, QOZB. And so it's real critical that this is the first kind of real testing date. Because of COVID, the IRS was nice enough to say, hey, look, we're not going to penalize you for missing the reinvestment mark, but this one counts for most people, unless you set up the Oz fund after June 30th. This is a hard test. You actually have to pass the test. Otherwise, you can have a 3% penalty on the shortfall. So if you have a $10 million Oz fund and you didn't do anything with it, you could get penalized, up to 3% for the period that you didn't have that money invested. So that's test number, or the deadline number 2, and then deadline number 3 is on your QOZB, or in many cases you have multiple QOZBs, qualified opportunity zone businesses, underneath your QOF, qualified opportunity fund. You have to make sure that 70% of those assets are reinvested into qualified opportunity zone business property. And that, again, is real estate, operating, tangible assets. Now, they give you slack down at the QOZB level that if they give you up to at least 31 months, and for startup businesses, and depending on how you funded that operating business, that's up to 62 months you don't have to deploy it into hard assets. So you could have it temporarily invested in, if it's a startup business, you can have that invested in a stock portfolio, bonds, etc. Now, once you get beyond that 31-month period, in general, then there's a very onerous test that you can't have non-qualified financial property, which is defined as marketable securities, notes or bonds that have a maturity more than 18 months out. You couldn't invest in crypto. They give you a sliver. You can have 5% of your assets invested in what I just mentioned, but no more. Now, up at the QOF level, again, a lot of our clients want to invest in crypto or marketable securities while they're deciding what they're going to do. At the QOF level, up at the top level fund, you can put 10% of that into marketable securities, crypto, loans, longer than 180 months. But and then you can have 5% down below. So a lot of our clients are stuffing 15% crypto into their dual structure, and they're going to hold that for 10 years on the presumption that they're going to get tax-free gains on that after 10 years. But you have to be very, very careful. The item number 4, the fourth deadline, which really isn't December 31st. It should be like day one of setting up your QOZB. This isn't required at the QOF level, but if you have a qualified opportunity zone business, and that could be a real estate investment too, you have to have a business plan in effect. Now it can be, most people don't have it, laid out exactly every little asset they're going to buy, but you have to lay out, hey, I'm planning on buying a piece of land and building a fourplex, or I'm going to build a commercial building, or I'm going to start a business. But you have to have, enough substance in that business plan, so the IRS, if they do audit you, you can show them, oh, this is my business plan from the start. And then you also have to have a schedule of saying, hey, that $3 million I have in my Opportunity Zone Fund, this is how at the beginning I proposed to, or at least I was projecting to spend it. I was going to, within 6 months, I was going to buy a piece of land. I was going to get it entitled, and then months 24 through 30, I was going to, start construction and, spend the rest of it. So that was a pretty tight timeline for the build. But anyway, that's, those are the kind of the 4 big deadlines that, everybody should be focused on through the end of the year.
Wow, I was as you were talking, Blake, I'm writing notes and I'm trying to do this little flow chart of what we just went through, and I think I'm just gonna call you instead. Take care of it.
we have a lot.
Always take these roads.
Well, yeah, it's a lot to take in, and we do have, for any of your listeners, we're glad to share our timelines and what we call the gating, critical path to make sure you don't run afoul of any of these rules.
Yeah, that would be a drag if you went through the process and missed one thing and then everything falls apart.
Hey,
right.
Blake, you said that when people fund a qualified opportunity zone fund, you said that they have a certain amount of time to determine what to do with that money once it's in there, right? Can one of these funds invest in another fund itself, or does it have to do its own project?
That's an excellent question, and we run into this with some level of frequency. So if you set up your own Opportunity Zone Fund, you cannot invest in another qualified opportunity fund, but you can invest into their qualified opportunity zone business. Some fund managers will let you, most of them will, but some of them won't. So, and now in a crunch, and if you find after you've set up your own that you just fall in love with this other qualified opportunity fund, and if they're open to it, you can actually merge your fund into theirs. And most of these are pretty clean because you haven't really done anything with the money yet. So that's a possibility. Now, some of our clients have already dropped their money down into their subsidiary entity to start the 31-month reinvestment clock that you were just referring to, Ron. And then they might second guess and say, oh, I kind of want to do this other one. Well, you can upstream that money up to the QOF and then have them merge, or upstream the money to the QOF and have them invest at the lower level of the QOZB of the QOF that you're interested in. So there's a whole bunch of, it's highly flexible, but the short answer to your question is you can't invest QOF to QOF, unfortunately. It's almost kind of silly, but part of it is you're limited to 2 tiers for the most part on how, as one of my attorney friends refer to it as you can build a 2-story house, but they don't want you doing a 3-story or a 4-story structure. It blows up the whole QAF structure. And we've run into a few that we weren't involved in setting up, where they've got 3-tiered structures and they're like a bad structure, but we're fixing those.
So if you set up your own QAF and then you find some other fund and you like that better, you kind of merge into it so that your fund would kind of disappear and become their fund.
Yeah, right. It would just you would just kind of be absorbed by their QAF, and it would.
And they take over the money.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, you were right, Ron. It's better to just call Blake because Blake's got the ins and outs. So if you come into a problem, Blake can fix it.
Yeah.
And
Blake,
please call. I was going to say, please call before you form it or before you you try and restructure anything, because it's a lot more expensive for me to unwind what you've done wrong.
Too bad people don't learn that lesson. Too bad they don't learn that lesson and say, call the experts first before you break your house and then have to rebuild it.
Yeah.
Right.
Blake, I'm curious. I'm curious as to the type of clients you have that are forming these funds. Are these people like family offices which have the money and maybe looking for projects, or are more of these people projects looking for investors into their funds?
Yeah, most of my clients are kind of self-funded. So they've sold a big asset. Or they're just generating capital gains every year because they have big stock portfolios or real estate portfolios, and they're just recycling the money into a QAF. And I will tell you, though, it is changing behavior because they are doing projects in geographic areas that they wouldn't have touched absent the Oz Fund. And so they're doing some really, socially impactful projects. I had one client bought by a hospital to do COVID research. Another one's, building a port. Really long-term impactful things. So very few of my clients are actually raising outside funds. They're kind of self-funding. They've got their next 3 projects on the drawing board. They generate a gain, they roll it in there, and they start funding their new project. So it's an interesting client base that we have. But I probably have a dozen clients, maybe it's 20 clients that that are actually raising funds from outside parties.
Are your clients leaning more towards investing in businesses or doing social impact as opposed to creating real estate projects? Now that people know more about the program and know more about how to work their way through it, are they changing their attitudes, and what are they going into?
Yeah, so I would definitely say the trend has increased in investing into operating businesses, and I would say most of them are starting their own businesses. Occasionally they'll go in and be buying somebody else's business, and sometimes that business is in the zone. It could be out of the zone, and then they're going to move it into the zone. And you can do all 3 of those. Build from scratch a business, buy a business that's already in there, or move a business into the zone. And each one has, the last 2 have a little bit more complications, but as long as you're going to put about 2.5 times more money into the tangible assets that are in that existing business, you can turn a an old business into a new Oz qualified business. You just have to upgrade it sufficiently.
Right.
Is there a criteria that affect whether you have like a service business as opposed to a retail or product-based business? Are they both treated the same, or is one better than the other?
Well, the inventory. If you have inventory, or if you have, a bunch of retail locations in and out of the zone, that can complicate things. But you can have up to 30% of your assets down at the QOZB subsidiary level can be non-qualified assets. So like if you owned a chain of fast food restaurants and 8 of them were in the zone, in different zones, and 2 were out, still all 10 could be part of a qualified, those would all be qualified assets. And when you sold all 10 of them, even the 2 that were outside the zone, you would get the Oz benefits after 10 years.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that part.
I'll tell you, there's so much to know. There's so much to know in this whole marketplace. It's incredible. But Blake, listen, we talked about this whole podcast about people calling you. How do people get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so just in case people don't have a pencil right now or a pen, just Google Blake Christain CPA or Blake Christain Oz, and all of my contact information will come up, all of my articles and things, and there's a lot of you can have many days of reading of Oz articles I've written, so you can self-educate at a very low price, but glad to answer anybody's questions. And this is my cell phone number, so 562-305-8050 is the easiest way to get a hold of me, because I'm working virtually all the time. And glad to help anybody out. There's a lot of pitfalls, but this program is so unbelievably impactful, and just has so many tax benefits. I'm just happy to help investors. I'm happy to help CPAs, attorneys, whoever needs help.
That's exactly right. That's a great way to close this out, because Vicki, I'm telling you, another podcast about opportunity zones. It seems to me that if you get hooked up with the right people and you create a fund the correct way, you do everything, you keep to all the deadlines, everything that we talked about in this podcast, everything that Blake is saying, if you do it correctly, I really think the downside of investing or creating an opportunity zone fund for business purposes specifically is almost a no-brainer, right? Do you agree?
Absolutely, Ron, absolutely. Because it's one thing to have a project in an opportunity zone, but you have a business, and as I said and always say, the business is where the impact of the program is really realized, because now you have elevated that zone, elevated that community, and the people who live there, and you've changed their lives, and that comes with the business, I believe, as opposed to building a hotel. And absolutely, Ron, we've done a lot of podcasts about opportunity zones from this point of view and that point of view, but I have to say the best ones we ever do are with Blake, because I believe Blake is the go-to guy for opportunity zones to make sure they're done right, created right, and will be successful down the road in 10 years. You've got to call Blake, because he is the best in this opportunity zone field. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. If I could be so bold to do a shameless plug, that if anybody wants to find it, and it does address what you just mentioned, Vicki, and that is, that operating businesses are very valuable. My Oz fund actually gives people both. So we have a 20,000 square foot manufacturing facility that we own, and we have the operating business in one Oz fund. So you'll get exposure to both real estate and the operating business. So it's a hedge, and you can find out. You'll see some of our very cool container home designs at mitmodular.com.
Good.
Awesome. Yeah,
good.
That's
you got
great.
that
You know what we should do, Blake? We should actually do a podcast just on that fund. How about that? You can go into the details and everything. We should set something up like that. That would be really great.
Exactly.
Well, glad to do that.
Absolutely. We'll do it next week.
And if you need to, you can cut that plug out.
No, that's okay. We'll keep
not
it in.
A chance, Blake. Not a chance.
It's like that poker player that has the ace up the sleeve and plays it at the last minute. Like, there we go, the odds fund. It worked out well.
That's why Blake is so good, and why you should contact Blake, because not only does he know what he's doing in regard to opportunity zones and funds and businesses and everything, but he's actually doing it. So he really knows what he's doing because he's doing what he's talking about. That's fabulous.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you. That's the best plug.
Yes, and you still took our time today to talk to our audience, so I really appreciate that. Thanks so much, Blake, for being a guest on the show once again. And Vicki, thanks for co-hosting the show with me. This has been great. Folks, you're listening to the Mapable USA podcast at mapableusa.com. Just go to that website, scroll down, you'll see all our syndication sources. Pick the one you like best, subscribe, and you'll never miss another one of our episodes. If you want to be a guest on the show, like Blake was today, there's a guest tab there. You can fill that out. We'll see what we can do by getting you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, send us an email over at info@mapableusa.com, or just leave a comment on whatever page you're listening to this on right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. We'll be at you next time with another Mappable USA podcast. Have a great week, everyone.